Welcome to this week's virtual Drasha. This week we have the incredible privilege to read Parshas Titzaveh. And Parshas Titzaveh goes into incredible detail regarding the big day kuna, the Kohanic vestments. And one of those begadim was something called the Me'il. We could loosely translate it as a tunic or as a robe. It had a neck hole. The Kohen put it on over him. And the Torah describes this in Perek Chav Ches, Pasuk Lamed Gimel, chapter 28, verse 33. The Torah describes the bottom of the me'il, the bottom of the tunic or of the robe. Va'asisa al shulav rimone tcheles va'argaman v'tola ashani al shulav saviv upa'amone zahav b'socham saviv. So the Torah describes as follows, that on the bottom, we'll call it on the hem, really there wasn't a hem, but on the actual bottom of the garment, you had a series of bells and pomegranates. Pa'amonim, bells, and rimonim, pomegranates. Now, of course, the pomegranates weren't literal pomegranates, but rather, again, they took the shape of a pomegranate woven out of blue wool, purple wool, and red wool. Magnificently beautiful. Tcheles, argamon, tola ashani. And Rashi explains that, in fact, there was a pomegranate and a bell, pomegranate and a bell, pomegranate and a bell. This was the bottom. This was on the bottom of the me'il. And what's interesting to note is as follows. So the role of the bells on the bottom of the me'il are quite obvious. The goal was that when the Kohen Gadol would come into the Mishkan and later on come into the Beis Hamikdash, the bells announced his arrival. On a most basic level, the Mishkan, the tabernacle, later on the Beis Hamikdash, is the house of the Ribono Shalom. You know, there's a halacha. The halacha is that you don't walk into someone's house without knocking. The truth is, the halacha really is, even one doesn't walk into their own home without knocking. A person is first supposed to knock. That's proper derech eretz. It's proper conduct. Even in your own home, there are other people there. You should have derech eretz for them. Alachas kama v'kama, all the more so. When walking into someone else's home, you have to announce your arrival. You have to knock. You have to ring the bell. So the Kohen, when he enters into the Mishkan, enters into the Beis Hamikdash later on, it was the house of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it makes sense to go ahead and announce his arrival. That was the role of the bells. But the Lubavitch Rebbe asks an interesting question. He says, what was the role of the pomegranates? What are the pomegranates doing on the bottom there? So just as an aside, there happens to be an interesting dispute where the bells inside the pomegranates, next to the pomegranates. So this is a machlokis, a dispute between Rashi and the Ramban. But leaving that aside, the Rebbe asks, so what was the role of the pomegranates? I understand the role of the bells to announce the arrival of the Kohen in the Mishkan later on in the Beis Hamikdash, but what is the role of the pomegranates? And if you want to say it's just decorative, that is just there to be beautiful. Again, because so much of the Beis Hamikdash, so much of the Mishkan, and so much of the Kohanic clothing was about bringing physical beauty to spiritual service. Why pomegranate? Why not an apple? Why not a grape? Why not an olive? Why a decorative pomegranate? And the Rebbe says something absolutely beautiful. The Lubavitch Rebbe explains that the Gemara says, Afilu rekanin shabo. You know, Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, we have all different types, all different sizes, shapes, all different types of spirituality. We have tzaddikim, we have righteous people, and we have people who are righteously challenged. We have all different kinds of people within the ranks of Am Yisrael. But the Gemara makes a beautiful observation. The Gemara says, Afilu reikanin shabo, even the emptiest of Jews, right? Even the basest of Jews, even the Jew who is so spiritually bereft, male mitzvos kerimon, is as filled with mitzvos, as filled with good deeds, as a pomegranate is filled with seeds. Afilu rekonin shabo, even the emptiest Jew is filled with goodness like a pomegranate is filled with seeds. You know, there's a beautiful story that's told that a man once came over to Rabbi Yitzchak Berditchev. He said to Rabbi, the Torah is false. Okay, so most of us, when we hear something like that, we'd already get fired up. But Rabbi Yitzchak had such ahavas, he had such love for every Jew. He said, okay, tell me, why do you say that the Torah is false? So the man says, Rabbi, I'll tell you why. The second paragraph in Shema says, V'haya im shamoa tishmu'a mitzvosai. If you will listen to my mitzvos, then Hashem says, if you listen to my mitzvos, I'll give you all of these rewards. Well, the man looks at Rabbi Yitzchak and says, Rabbi, I don't do any mitzvahs. And in fact, I do averis, and not just some averis. I'm not a recreational sinner. I'm a habitual offender. I sin and sin and sin and sin, and yet I'm fabulously wealthy. I'm fabulously successful. I want and lack for nothing. So obviously the Torah is false. The Torah links material success with listening to mitzvahs. And Baruch Hashem, I don't know if you said Baruch Hashem, but I don't do a thing, and I transgress everything, and I have so much. And the Rebbe says something amazing. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak looked at this Jew and he said, my precious Jew, my Tyrekin, my precious child, the fact that you could ask me that question means that you've read Kriyat Shema at least one time in your life. And there's not enough money in the world to reward you for that beautiful mitzvah. And that's the Gemara means, Afilu Rekonin Sheba. Even the emptiest of Jews, even the most base person, is filled with goodness, is filled with mitzvahs, is filled with holiness, like a pomegranate is filled with seeds. And says the Lubavitcher Rebbe, that was the message. You see, the Kohen wears the pomegranate on the bottom of his garment. Because there are some people who are so low, some people who are so bereft of holiness that literally they're like dragging against the floor. But even those Jews who are dragging against the floor, even those Jews who are so empty of what appears to appear apparently empty of all goodness, are still pomegranates. The pomegranate might be dragging against the floor, it might be really low down, it might be on the bottom of the garment, but it's a pomegranate nevertheless. You see, it was the job of the Kohen to be the representative of Am Yisrael. And when you are the representative of the Jewish people, you're not just the representative of the spiritual elite. You're not just a representative of the holy. You're not just a representative of those who do what they're supposed to do, but we're all part of Am Yisrael. Whether you're a tzaddik or whether you're a pomegranate, whether you're up high or whether you're the lowest of the low, we're one people, we're one nation, and we bear a mutual responsibility for one another. And the Kohen, when he entered into the Mishkan, and later on into the Beis HaMikdash, when he came before God, he came with Klal Yisrael, with the Jewish people on his shoulders. And Klal Yisrael is not just the tzaddikim. It's not just the righteous. It's not just the learned. It's not just those who do what they're supposed to do. But it's those who are really low also. It's those who are base. It's those who are bereft. Because even those, Malei Mitzvos Kirimon, have as much goodness and as much holiness as a pomegranate had seeds. This pomegranate on the bottom of the Kohen's garment, on the bottom of his me'il, was there to represent the Jews who had lost their way, the Jews who had lost their light, and to remind the Kohen and to remind all of Am Yisrael that even those who look so far and even those who look so lost and so bereft are Malei Mitzvos Kerimon, are filled with holiness, filled with goodness, like a pomegranate is with seeds. And it's an important lesson for us also. Because, there are times in life when I feel lost, and I feel like I don't have my light, and I feel like I'm not the person I want to be, and I'm not living the life I want to lead. And sometimes it's because I've made dramatic mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes, they're doozies, and sometimes again I feel like I'm never going to recover from that mistake, and I feel as a result of the mistakes that I've made, there's no course correction. I'm just done. And so comes Parshas Titzaveh and says, even if you're feeling low, even if you feel like you're dragging on the ground, even if you feel that I've made so many bad decisions, so many terrible life choices, that I'm stuck, I'm at the end of the road. Look at the bottom of the Kohen's me'il. Look at the bottom of his garment. And what are you going to see there? A pomegranate. And what does that pomegranate represent? That pomegranate represents me. That rimon represents me. And it reminds me that even when I make mistakes, and even when I take wrong turns, and even when I mess up, I am still a pomegranate. And just as the pomegranate is filled with seeds, so too am I, even at my lowest point, filled with mitzvos, filled with Kiddusha, filled with holiness. And it's that knowledge that I'm a pomegranate, even when I'm at my lowest, that gives me the strength, gives me the koach, gives me the resolve, and gives me the hope and optimism to pick myself up and rebuild. We should be zoche, each of us, to activate our inner pomegranate. We should be zoche, Mirat Hashem, that even if we're dragging, to find the strength to lift ourselves back up, find the strength from the me'il, find the strength from the rimon, find the strength from the pomegranate. Wishing everyone a good Erev Shabbos and a beautiful Shabbos Kodesh.